A wall of white silence stretches from horizon to horizon, broken only by the scream of polar wind. Mountains of ice, the height of office buildings, collapse into black water without any warning at all. A blizzard moves across the plateau at 200 kilometers per hour, erasing everything in its path. Beneath the surface, a river system larger than the Amazon flows in total darkness under 2 miles of ice. Emperor penguins lean into a storm that would ground aircraft and kill any unprotected human within minutes. A volcano rises through the ice and burns quietly beneath the surface with complete geological indifference. The ocean here freezes and melts on a cycle that reshapes the planet's entire weather system each year. This is Antarctica, the coldest, driest, windiest, highest, and most isolated continent on this Earth. It holds 90% of the world's ice and 70% of all the fresh water that exists. If its ice sheet melted, every coastline on Earth would disappear under 60 meters of rising ocean. It is larger than Europe and larger than the United States, yet no human civilization has ever settled it. The temperature at its center has reached minus 89 degrees, the lowest ever recorded anywhere on this Earth. The wind at its coast has been measured at 327 kilometers per hour without stopping. There are no trees, no rivers, no soil, no insects, no land mammals, and no permanent human population here. And yet, life finds its way here with a stubbornness that overrides every physical argument against its presence. Icebergs the size of countries break from the coast and drift northward for years without ever stopping. The sun in summer circles the horizon for months without once dipping below it, a light without end. In winter, the darkness lasts 6 full months while temperatures fall to levels the human mind cannot process. The ice beneath the central plateau is nearly 5 kilometers thick and older than human civilization itself. Antarctica does not welcome visitors. It tolerates them briefly on terms it sets entirely for itself. The continent has no owners, no capital, no currency, and no permanent residents, only a treaty and ice. 7 countries have made territorial claims here, but the ice has never acknowledged even a single one of them. Its coastline changes every year as glaciers advance and ice shelves fracture and fall into the sea below. The katabatic winds descend from the plateau and accelerate to their full destructive force before reaching the coast. Beneath the eastern ice sheet, a sealed lake the size of Lake Ontario sits liquid in total darkness. The continent generates its own weather, its own currents, and its own logic found nowhere else on Earth.
9 months in the dark. It strips everything away, leaving only what's essential. You learn to listen to the silence. It's about understanding what that solitude makes of you.
Antarctica is not the bottom of the world. It is the engine that runs the world above it. In spring, the sea ice fractures along invisible fault lines, and the ocean reclaims what winter had taken. Humpback whales surface in the newly opened leads, exhaling columns of frozen breath into the cold Antarctic air. The ice edge becomes an extraordinary feeding ground, krill so dense they darken the water below. Leopard seals patrol the ice margins with a patience that makes them feel more deliberate than ordinary hunger. A Weddell seal surfaces through a breathing hole kept open by tooth through 2 full meters of solid ice. Albatrosses ride the Southern Ocean on wingspans of 3.5 meters, never once needing a wing beat. The Drake Passage below Cape Horn generates the largest and most powerful waves in the ocean system. Swells here reach 15 meters and travel without interruption around the entire circumference of the planet Earth. There is no land to slow them and no continental shelf to reduce their height or speed. In summer, 1 million Adelie penguins return to their rookeries on the same day they departed last year. They navigate by star position and magnetic field with accuracy that no human navigation system has ever matched. The rookery noise is extraordinary, a continuous wall of sound from 1 million birds calling at once. Glaciers move toward the coast at speeds visible to researchers who photograph the same survey markers each season. The Pine Island Glacier moves 9 kilometers per year and accelerates as the warmer ocean beneath rises. A tabular iceberg breaks from the Ross Ice Shelf and begins a decade-long journey toward warmer waters. The berg is larger than Jamaica and will take years to dissolve into the cold surrounding Southern Ocean. Beneath the Weddell Sea, dense cold water sinks and begins the global ocean circulation connecting all seas. This conveyor belt regulates the climate of every continent above the equator and has done so for countless millennia. The Southern Ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide than any other body of water on the surface of this Earth. Without that absorption, the warming already released by human industry would surpass every current climate projection by far. In winter, the sea ice expands by 20 million square kilometers in just a few months of freezing. The continent effectively doubles in size as ice extends northward toward the open ocean in every direction. Emperor penguins huddle in formations of thousands against the winter storms, rotating inward to share the body warmth. The huddle itself moves as a slow tide of black and white bodies drifting across the howling polar dark. Mount Erebus produces permanent lava lakes inside its summit crater, the southernmost active volcano on this planet. Lava bombs eject from the crater and cool to black glass before landing on the surrounding polar ice. The image of molten rock beside polar ice exists nowhere else on the surface of this Earth. Antarctica moves, breathes, calves, freezes, and erupts on its own rhythms and on no one else's schedule at all. The first confirmed sighting of Antarctica occurred in 1820, the last continent ever seen by a human eye. For most of history, the southern continent existed only as a theoretical shape drawn on deliberately blank maps. Ancient geographers reasoned a southern landmass must exist to balance the weight of the northern continents. They called it Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land, and left it blank for 2 millennia. The first people to winter here were the Belgica's crew, trapped in Antarctic pack ice in 1898. They survived scurvy, frostbite, and psychological collapse through months of unbroken Antarctic winter darkness. In 1911, Roald Amundsen reached the South Pole by dog sledge across 34 days of brutal plateau travel. Scott arrived 34 days later to find a Norwegian flag already planted at 90 degrees south. Scott and all 4 companions died on the return journey, caught by a blizzard 11 miles from their depot. Shackleton's Endurance was crushed by pack ice in 1915, stranding 27 men on the frozen Weddell Sea. He made an 800-mile open boat crossing of the Drake Passage to reach help and returned to rescue every man. Not one Endurance crew member died, among the most extraordinary survival stories in all of history. The heroic age of Antarctic discovery relied on wooden ships, woolen clothing, and a misread of the continent. Nearly every early expedition underestimated the cold, the distance, and the speed at which conditions could turn fatal. McMurdo Station on Ross Island now hosts over 1,000 people each summer as the continent's largest human settlement. It has a greenhouse, a bowling alley, and a bar, yet depends entirely on resupply from outside. The Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station rides the ice sheet, moving 100 meters downhill every single year. Each year, the station must be raised above the surface as accumulating snow gradually buries the lower level. Concordia, in the interior, spends each winter completely isolated, the nearest other humans 800 miles away. The winter crew of 6 to 15 scientists experiences conditions closer to a Mars mission than any other posting. British teams overwinter at Halley Station, a facility built on hydraulic stilts above the shifting Brunt ice shelf. In 2017, a crack appeared in the ice shelf and the station was evacuated for 2 consecutive Antarctic winters. The Brunt calved a major iceberg in 2023, and the station's long-term future remains under active scientific review. Argentine researchers at Esperanza have raised children born on the continent, the only humans native to Antarctica. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 suspended all territorial claims and committed the continent solely to peaceful science. 54 nations operate under its terms, one of the most successful international agreements ever formally produced. The treaty allows no military presence, no resource extraction, and no permanent civilian residence of any nation here. Antarctica was never truly tamed by the treaty. It simply permits humans to observe from a careful distance. In February 2002, the Larsen B ice shelf, 10,000 years old, collapsed in 35 days. Satellites captured 3,000 square kilometers of ancient ice disintegrating simultaneously into the cold surrounding sea. Scientists who had studied the shelf for decades said the collapse was not supposed to happen for another century. The western Antarctic ice sheet rests on bedrock below sea level, vulnerable to sudden and irreversible collapse. If it fails, sea level rise of 3 to 4 meters becomes possible within one human lifetime. The Thwaites Glacier, called the Doomsday Glacier, retreats at a rate that accelerates with every passing year. Its collapse alone would raise global sea levels by 65 centimeters and destabilize all glaciers behind it. A polar vortex breakdown above the continent sends Antarctic cold spiraling northward into South America and beyond. Southern ocean storms, once seasonal, now run year-round as shifting temperature gradients reshape the surface conditions. A research team trapped by 11 days of storm reported winds that never dropped below 180 kilometers per hour. Tent poles bent flat to the ground and held, then bent and held again across 11 brutal days. The ocean beneath the Ross ice shelf warms from below, melting the ice's contact point with the seafloor. When that contact breaks, the shelf loses its anchor and glaciers behind it accelerate toward the ocean. A rogue wave in the Drake Passage reached 28 meters, taller than a 9-story building above the waterline. The vessel that recorded it described the wave as arriving from outside the prevailing direction of the sea state. Orcapods coordinate wave-washing attacks on Antarctic minke whales using communication that defies simple animal classification.
Lava washing requires surveillance, surfacing to locate prey.
The planning required challenges every line we have drawn around what we are willing to call animal intelligence. Colossal squid weighing 700 kilograms hunt beneath the Ross Sea ice, rarely seen and never fully known. The darkness under the ice shelf hosts ecosystems surviving entirely without sunlight or any energy from the surface. Chemosynthetic bacteria at hydrothermal vents below the ice produce life from volcanic heat in conditions mirroring ancient Earth. A winter fire at a remote Antarctic station is not an emergency. It is a near-certain death sentence. Emergency support is hundreds of kilometers away and completely unreachable by any aircraft in polar winter conditions. The continent operates on geological timescales that no human safety planning has ever been able to anticipate fully. The ozone hole above Antarctica expands yearly, allowing ultraviolet radiation that damages unprotected tissue within mere hours. Ice cores from Antarctica hold air trapped from 800,000 years ago, the oldest atmosphere ever directly sampled. Every bubble in those cores records climate, carbon, and volcanic events that no other archive anywhere has preserved. Antarctica is not ending, it is changing in ways the world is not yet prepared to face. It existed before us, and in every scenario that matters, it will exist long after we are gone.